Hey everyone, and welcome to Live with Cami. If you're watching this on our Facebook group or our YouTube channel, this is Live with Cami. If you're watching this or if you're listening to this in our podcast, it is Homeschool Success with Cami Juanes. Welcome everyone. We are live with Melissa Muir today, and we're going to be talking about. You guys have heard from her before, by the way. You've heard from her before when we were talking a lot about being engaged with your kids and having that special time with your kids and really giving them one-on-one time, which is really important. So if you haven't listened to that, make sure you go back and listen to that one. I'll listen to the replay of that one. However, we're going to be talking about gifted students today because gifted students, all our students are geniuses. And we're going to talk about that because I love Melissa and I, we're like here. We like talk eye to eye and we heart to heart and we're on the same page. And I absolutely love it. So when we talk like that, we're going to be talking about she's going to explain this. I mean, what gifted students are because she's the expert here. But she has a huge background in teaching both in the classroom and out of the classroom. She has a worldly experience. She's living abroad right now, which is super amazing. And she really has a really good handle on what does it mean to be gifted and what does it mean? How do we keep track and keep up with these kids? Sometimes it's like, whoo, they're like moving faster than we are. And I know I've been there. It can be really overwhelming. So I'm super excited because Melissa also is one of our guest speakers and guest presenters in the Homeschool Success Mastery program. And today you're going to get a Scooby snack of what she's talking about in her workshop in the Homeschool Success Mastery program. If you need information on that, or if you have a middle school or a high schooler, or you have gifted students and you're kind of like, you've already been in your homeschool groove, but you need to get your ducks in a row and really create depth in learning. You need to create mastery of being a mentor and prepare your kids for future success. This is the Homeschools Mastery program, and you want to look into the show notes in the comments below, and you want to check that out because Melissa's presentation is so fabulous. We had such a great time, and she's so knowledgeable about all this stuff, you guys. She teaches all the time, so it's super fun. And so, Melissa, I just would love you to, I know everybody probably knows who you are already, but let's go ahead, and she's got so many amazing resources, you guys. You got to check that out. But go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and just tell us a little bit about how you work with gifted students.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be back and great to be talking about this topic that I really am passionate about. I am a homeschooling mom myself. I have 4 kids. Currently, they are 8, 10. Sorry, let's start from the bottom. 4, 6, 8, and 10. And they are all over the board. They've got strengths, they've got weaknesses. And so this really comes home to me because I can see this in all of my kids. I know you've seen it in your son. And so it's very cool to then be able to kind of see the rubber meet the road and really do it in our homeschools every day. But like you said, I do teach all the time. I got started in the great Commonwealth of Virginia, where I'm originally from, taught gifted middle school Spanish, which was a very special time in my life. I loved it. And then moved abroad, came down here to Ecuador, taught in an international school for a little bit, co-taught, really learned how to teach kids to read, which is a whole nother ball game. Did not have that experience before and totally prepped me for teaching my own kids to read in our homeschool now. And that was about 7 years ago that we really started homeschooling. And since then, I've been teaching online and tutoring kids in the local area. And so I work with an organization called Brain Train, mostly do classes on OutSchool as well. And those classes are designed with gifted kids in mind. But it's really cemented in me the desire to see this offered to more kids because not every kid can take that class. And a lot of kids that are homeschooled would do well to take classes like that, but aren't in those classes. And we can totally provide that as parents. And so I think it's really, it'll behoove you to take some notes, probably get in Homeschool Success Mastery because we really go deep into different areas of giftedness, different types of gifted learners, which I really wish I had known about before as a kid who went through gifted programs in elementary, middle, and high school. I think I got some great things out of it. And then there were other things that kind of hindered me because I really checked all the boxes and knew all the rules and stuff like that. So if I had been pushed in some different ways, I think I probably would have dived in deeper to subjects that really were interesting to me. So that's kind of my background with gifted teaching. And yeah, right now I have unit studies and writing opportunities, and foreign language is something that I love, with French, English, and Spanish stuff. So I would love for people to check those out. But the idea here is that we're talking about gifted kids, and we need to figure out what gifted means. So Cami, can I give a little definition there?
Please, please.
All right.
Yes, let's find out what that is, because really, I mean, all our kids are gifted in some areas or another, but in terms of school, in public school, we say we have these programs and everything that are for gifted kids. And so they define that in a much different way than we'd say, well, our kid has gifts in this area, right? So what are those definitions that we use?
Yeah, so those labels, and giftedness falls under the kind of area umbrella of exceptional learners. So some may know this as like special education, which would be, physical or intellectual disabilities, as well as our gifted kids. And so they're all overlapping. This is a big old Venn diagram, people. So it could be somebody who does really well at academics. I was a box checker. I did really well at academics. If I knew what you expected of me, I would give it to you. I'd get an A+, and I would walk out of your room and you would think nothing more of me. But there are other kids in your class who are going to push back against you because they're bored, because this is not interesting. The way that you're asking them to present their knowledge is not interesting. They're just not into it. So you might encounter some resistance there. We might also have double labeled gifted kids. So we might also know this as 2E, twice exceptional. So kids with intellectual disabilities or a learning disability like ADHD or Asperger's or all sorts of different abilities in there, but there is a gifted component there that we definitely need to lean into. And so I see this a lot in my online classes, but I know that if kids have been in the public school system for any amount of time and they've been labeled as gifted, then they might be that more academic type. They're getting high test scores. They know a lot of factual information, but we also need to be really cognizant of the social aspects of giftedness. Are kids being kind of lifted up because, wow, are this star student, they're just doing great. A lot of times we have like an undercover kind of Mean Girls vibe, like Katie, right? The main character of Mean Girls. Anybody seen it? Where she's just a math whiz, but she's in high school and it's not cool to be good at math. And so a lot of times we've got these undercover gifted kids. This is kind of like middle school girl syndrome, where kids just want to bury whatever they're good at to fit in. So we might have that too. So there's a lot of different types of gifted students, but also areas of giftedness. So that kind of intellectual leadership type things where you might expect to find gifted kids, but also creative. Are they, coming up with these creative engineering type solutions, creative problem solving, complex problem solving type situations that they excel at? We might have artistic giftedness. So, think fine arts, think music. All of that is going to be another type of giftedness. And then also just, pure math giftedness and things like that, where they might just have an obsession. And we'll talk about this more, I think, soon. But the idea here is that a lot of gifted kids have an obsession, and we can let them run with it for a while. But there is also this need for well-roundedness, and how we go about that, I think, is the art of homeschool success mastery, because there's some limits there, right? We don't want kids just stuck on the couch for 6 hours reading a day. Reading is good. We're not saying it's not, but there's a little bit of boundaries, a few boundaries that we need to set there in order to help kids really excel beyond that. So that's kind of a broad definition of giftedness. Labels could be necessary. I should mention, labels could be necessary for certain programs, certain benefits, getting into certain camps or opportunities. That's out there. And a really good resource for this is davidsongifted.org. That's a great place to go if you're looking for different support resources.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the fact that you talked about the labels too, because it can be something that I know in public school that our kids live into, both negative and positive. So they live into that in terms of, well, the expectation, the pressure, though, like, everything. If I'm gifted, then I'm supposed to be doing da 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 da, right? I'm supposed to be performing da da da. And if I'm not, if I'm a little bit behind in, getting a concept versus my peers, then all of a sudden, like, oh, I'm gifted, I'm supposed to be. There's all this pressure, and for us parents too, as seeing our kids as gifted, we always think, I think it's, oh my gosh, it's crazy because we have so much in our minds as far as we want them to be successful. But of course we think our kids are amazing, which they are, but we want to push them a little more. We tend to be more, okay, well, you're gifted, so you're ready for this and you're ready for that, and you can do this and you can take 3 math classes. I was just telling Melissa about a family that I knew that had a 7-year-old, and he was gifted. He was actually 2E. He was twice exceptional, but he was gifted, and they said, okay, well, we're going to just push him really hard. And he's 7. He's taking 3 math classes, and in person and not in person. They were homeschooling, but still, it was absolutely crazy. This kid was 7. I'm like, what, does he like it? It's really hard to balance that out when you're a parent and your kid, you want your kid to have the best opportunities possible, and and you're very competitive yourself or whatever. So it's really difficult to balance that. Like Melissa said, which is so hard. I know my son could read for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
In fact, this morning, I'm like, I don't hear anything. Are you getting ready for the day? And he's like, oh, I got a little distracted, which means he's reading.
Yeah.
That means
Yeah.
reading. That means reading. But so in terms of labels and just really, I know in public school, there's testing for gifted, being in the GATE program and, that kind of thing. So how do we identify if our kids are gifted?
Sure. So a lot of homeschool families, and here's where I might start, right? There's a lot of different ways you could do this, but where I might start is, going by their biological age and using the standards that they would be using in a public school, for example. Again, from Virginia, virginia.edu. No, that's my university. VDOE, Virginia Department of Education. There we go. VDOE would have the standards of education. Texas has its own. Other states have Common Core, and they're all over the place. But check them out, even if you're not from Virginia or from Texas. Grab those, print them off, and for your own benefit, just go through, because a lot of us don't remember what it was like to be in first or second grade, and like, what are you learning in those grades? What's typical? And we're going to use that word typical. Normal's not a thing. Typical, what's typical of that age? Because a lot of kids are going to be doing that sort of thing at that age. And kind of going through and seeing how your child is doing in their curriculum or whatever you're using for homeschool. We tend to use workbooks for math, and we've got a curriculum that we use for language arts that we feel great about. But as we're going through, we don't stop them at the grade that they should be at. And I'm using air quotes for those of you who are listening to this, because the idea is, if they're ready, why stop? Why make them wait 6 more months to start second grade when they just finished their workbooks? They're 6 years old and they're like, I'm good. Can we start at level 2? I saw that blue book up in the cabinet where you keep all of our next curriculum. Can I have it? I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it. So there's this natural curiosity, which if you see this curiosity, please go for it. Open doors. And we're going to get into this in just a second, but like freedom and discovery and choice is massive for gifted kids. And when you see them really going for this discovery and freedom kind of aspect, what do they choose? What do they gravitate toward? That might be the area where they are gifted. And I mentioned area where they're gifted because, the general cloud bubble of giftedness does not apply to every single subject. So a lot of times when we think about homeschoolers, one of the awkward conversations, I'm sure you've experienced this too, is, what grade are you in? Somebody meets them. Hey, what grade are you in? And there's this awkward conversation, especially for our kids, because, in terms of grade level, again, in air quotes, they're not working at their typical age grade level, which their peers are at. And so it makes them sound ostentatious to be like, I'm working at 6th grade. And they're like, but my friend is in 4th grade. And I'm like, don't worry. You can just say, I'm 10. and that's fine. And
Yes.
so there's just this kind of social moment there where if you prep your kids ahead of time, it might be helpful just to say, hey, I'm 10, and I like working on this stuff. I like working on fractions. I really like writing essays. I really like exploring this type of book, the genre of book. And so having those kind of answers kind of fills in the social gaps there where they might be working 1 or 2 grades ahead in a subject compared to their peers, but in another subject, they're right on schedule. They're right along with the typical grade level that they're in. So please don't be scared to move quickly through things that they already know. We are famous for skipping sentence diagramming because they know what the parts of a speech is and parts of speech are, and they don't need to sit there and diagram all these things. They don't need to repeat 12 spelling words that they already know how to spell. Just using common sense here and making sure that you're giving them the freedom and the choice and the discovery thing to say, hey, did you read anything in your book today that you didn't understand? Let's choose our spelling words from there, instead of
love
what the
that.
book is giving them.
Yeah.
And that way there's a little bit more personalization where they feel challenged rather than just serving up what's already in there. So identifying can come in lots of different ways. I would say what they gravitate toward and what you see them just excelling at and what they love. One thing that I saw and resonated with was this quote, and I'm going to misquote it right now, but like somebody saying, just don't grade me on it. I love this topic, this area, this subject so much. Just don't make it a class for me. Let me enjoy it. And I know you say this all the time, don't give them a grade for it. Just let them kind of explore and make progress so that they can then continue exploring. That grade, that number, this was one of the heart things behind our homeschool was I just was chasing numbers as a kid, and I didn't want that for our kids. I wanted it to be more of a holistic kind of conversation, discovery type thing, and that's where we've been at. And it's really cool to see our kids thrive in that way. So identifying, that's kind of where we're at for identifying. Did I leave anything out that you would add?
No, the only thing is that I know that you were talking about the identification for later use in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, in certain settings in college,
Sure.
whatever. So is there like a test? Is there like a something? How do you get
Great
that kind of
question.
identification?
Yeah, I would go to davidsaidgifted.org and seek out really official things that will be valid in your state. Again, I living abroad right now, I don't have my finger on the pulse of what's happening in certain states and it changes. So being able to go to a resource like davidsaidgifted.org or HSLDA so that you can seek out services that you're looking for.
Yeah, and just HSLDA is homeschoollegaldefenseassociation.org, and typically there's so many resources in there, even if you're not a member. So
Mhm.
definitely just check that website out, and then Davidson is
Davidson
definitely.
Gifted. Mhm.
Davidson Gifted is amazing resource, and that we will put in the comments and the show notes
Mhm.
as well. So you guys, this is really important. I love that you talked about the fact that they might be ahead in one area, but might not be in another area. And it's really important that we identify that as parents and not push the whole thing because, well, they're gifted. And so they must be gifted in all areas. And that's not necessarily, that's not how we are. I know if you look at ourselves, right? We have areas that we excel in and areas that we're not so much, right? Like I am not super spatial, but I my husband's super spatial. He's the one that puts up the pictures on the wall and things like that. And I just tell him if it's
Yeah.
straight. But
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But that I'm a creative in other ways and I can build things in other ways, right? So it just really depends on where your kids passion where they see they want to move on. And I love that parents often find that, well, they're in third grade and I don't want to is it okay if we move on? Is it okay if we're, what if they don't finish this one book that this time, but they're like in sixth grade in another place and it's totally fine. That's the beauty of homeschooling. That's what's so great. And it's so flexible. And that's what's so wonderful because you can take your kids wherever they're at and then you can help them keep that love of learning going by just digging in wherever they want to dig in. And then also you can just say, hey, we're here in this area because we're here, and it's
Mhm.
okay that your sibling is a little bit more in that area because you're in this area, right? And I think that's one thing with siblings too, is really, and I know you have 4 kids, so really thinking about how do you manage the sibling, like we're here up in this area and we're down in this area, and but our age differences mean that
Yeah.
we should be, how does that work out?
Yeah, it's a good question. We haven't had a ton of issue with it. I'm trying to think why. I know our kids lean into each other a lot, and hey, I need help drawing this thing, or I need help spelling this thing. And a lot of times, for better or for worse, they won't come to me for help. They'll be like, "Hey, Nyanya," is like the Spanish, like, "Hey, sis, hey, Nyanya, how do I spell this word?" And we do bilingual homeschooling, so a lot of the writing is in both English and Spanish. And one sister is better. Actually, it's really funny. Our 8-year-old is better at spelling in Spanish than in English, and our 10-year-old is better at spelling in English and Spanish. And so they'll lean into each other. So I don't know. I think from a really young age, we've celebrated that and said, "Hey, you're awesome at art," and not that you're not awesome at art, but the other one is really good at athletics, and the other one is like crazy good reader at like 6 years old, and you're just celebrating each thing. And we also point that out in like people in our family, and between my husband and I, we both work at home, and so it's fun to kind of point out those strengths and celebrate them. And so it's never felt like a competition, I guess. But we've also got enough books to go around. Nobody's lapped someone else yet. So talk to me in a couple of years. We'll see if we come back to that, but I don't think it'll be a problem. We're not going to be working 2 years ahead of where they should be.
And I think that's exactly it, because it's the way you approach it, right? It's the
Yeah.
way that you handle it and the culture in your home,
Mhm.
that everybody has different gifts, and everybody has, that's just ours, that's yours, that's
Yeah.
mine, that's whatever, and that's the way it goes. And it's okay if it changes, because we're developing, and
Mhm.
as we develop, things will go up and down or whatever the case, and that's just how it goes, right?
Mhm.
I love that idea. And so can you explain to us a little bit, so you already talked about a little bit of discovery, freedom, and choice, but
Mhm.
in terms of like putting a curriculum together, like how do we like do that and keep up with our kids? Because sometimes those kids that are really academic, they
Yeah.
fly, and we're like holding on to their shirt tails, like, wait, I'm coming.
Yeah, they are lightning fast thinkers, and so it's this is the fun part. But I will say, this is where you really need to lean into being a homeschooling family. This is why we're homeschooling, friends. This is the place. If you're going to put some extra oomph into your homeschool, this is the place to do it. And a lot of times, in an odd way, it doesn't even require much effort. It just requires the effort of letting go, of doing this, opening your hands up and letting go little by little. It might be knuckle by knuckle, but the idea here is to slowly let go of control, because if you're like me and you wanted to recreate school at home, you're working through this topic, this subject these days, and it's a little limiting. So when you start to open your mind up to what this could look like, it's a lot of going down these rabbit trails, these black holes of learning. And something that we did recently was using unit studies. I know you talked with Brittany Young about this recently. Fantastic episode, you guys. Go listen to that, because that is precisely what you want to do when you're opening up these doors. And whatever little door you can open up today, if I can do like a mini challenge for you, open up a door. What is it? Is it letting them explore this Nearpod lesson that you just grabbed for free? And there it is. It's a self-paced lesson. Here's a link, kiddo. You wanted to learn about Mars. Here's a whole lesson about it. Go explore. And they can explore like the VR part of it and stuff like that. Or maybe it's getting a new book at the library and having them just sit and read for fun. Funsies. Whoa, what a concept, right? There's no expected outcome, but I bet you're going to get some outcome out of it. So having the freedom to discover in whatever way they want. But with these unit studies, here's one example of what it looked like for us. We were reading a book called The War That Saved My Life, and it's about World War II from a kiddo's perspective in England. She was part of the evacuation in London and was put on a train out to the countryside. And she goes through a lot. But in that book, they talk about Anderson shelters, these very cheap little shelters that were dome shaped. Why dome shaped? Why half moon shaped? Oh, well, we should look into that. What other things were shaped like that to be strong? Oh, an aqueduct. oh, look at the dome of these famous buildings in Europe. Wow, interesting. And this only cost how much? Oh, wow, about $20 to make these outside to keep people alive. That's cool. And then let's talk about rationing. Now we're getting into economics. Then we're going to talk about the languages involved, spies. We're going to talk about interpersonal relationships, about class structures. Whoa, where's the king and queen and princesses and prince at this point? Like, it's crazy. And so you can really do these deep dives and come out the other side learning about so much more. And this doesn't have to cost a lot. This doesn't have to mean big, extensive field trips. Field trips are great. That'd be fun. We don't do a ton of them, but where we live, we've got amazing plant life at our doorstep. I live in the Andes. And so we went to the botanical gardens and were able to see crazy cool plants last week. And then, figuring out ways that you can kind of learn more. And this could be somebody in your community. Maybe you can interview someone. Maybe you can go to a museum and learn more about it. But if you're staying at home, this could be a YouTube video. We love Johnny Harris. Johnny Harris is not meant for kids, but if I've watched it before and I know it's okay, like there's a ton of geopolitical stuff in there that is fascinating for kids because they don't see much of it. Let's see, what else? Nearpod is fantastic. Again, another free tool where you can just kind of go in, find a lesson or a topic that you're looking for. We use Google Docs to kind of keep our kids internet action a little bit more focused, if you will. And so I'll just put the link in there, label it, Switzerland bunker Nearpod lesson. And they're going to learn about why Swiss bunkers were all over the place and all that stuff. So there's a bunch of stuff out there. So I would say give kids the freedom to discover rather than presenting it to them on a platter. And then the freedom and the choice to show what they know. So again, a lot of times with our book work, they've got workbooks. They've got an essay to write. They've got some short answer questions to answer. Great, that's fine. And those are necessary skills, along with oral presentations, presenting in front of a crowd, presenting to authority, presenting to peers. But what if we gave them the option sometimes to create something, to create a video, learn how to use Canva, edit videos on Canva. Wow, that's a cool skill to have. Make a poster. Again, our kids have used Canva, but others want to use pen, paper, paint, glitter. But all these things are at their fingertips. And again, think of those creative kids. Think of those artsy kids. Think of those kids who really want to perform and show what they know. And then for the kid who just wants to write and read about a topic and then tell you orally, fantastic. Maybe you record it. Maybe you send it to somebody and they can send back a reply and say, wow, that was so cool. We do that a lot with family members who live back in the States. And so there's a ton of different ways that you can really allow for freedom and choice in their output, as well as what they're discovering that they want to learn about. So in summary, we use the books and then we jump off the deep end and we go learn wherever we want about the stuff that they're seeing in their books.
I love that. And yeah, it can spark from anywhere. Inspiration can spark from anywhere. It really can. I know that, this semester has not looked at all like I thought it was going to look in terms of our study. And it's really been something we were going to focus on a lot was this mentoring book club sort of thing. It's mentored and it's really amazing. But we actually, for my son who has disliked writing for years, and I mean years, he has slowly in this year become, all of a sudden it's just coming out of him, and because he reads so high level, it's coming out of him in a way that is so deep and so thoughtful, and the quality of writing is unbelievable, and I've taught him hardly any of it. And so it's really amazing to be, overtly taught him. And so it's really amazing to see him say, oh, you know what? I'm really into this. He was doing some classes on AI and he was really interested in it. And so he was doing that. And I want to write a paper on AI. And I'm like, okay. So I think it's a lot. And I love what you said about the choice, because it's a lot of the freedom and the letting go, which you guys know I call the educational should. And I do a lot of talking about the educational should in all of my courses, Homeschool Success Club and Homeschool Success Mastery. But if you haven't listened to the podcast episode number 6, educational should, definitely go back and listen to that, because it takes a long time to unlearn it. And it is, like Melissa said, like one knuckle at a time. You're letting go of the shirt tails, right?
Yeah.
But if you can get to that point to where you're saying, he says, I really want to write a paper on da da da. I'm like, go ahead, write a paper, fine. We ditched everything for like several days, for like a week, because he wrote for over 5 hours that day. And he wrote it just he woke up there, can I work on my paper, I'm like, go ahead, work on your paper. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
fine with me. It doesn't matter, because he's super passionate about it. And then comes, look what I've read, look what I've written, look at da. Oh, and he's using words that like normal people do not use.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where
Yeah.
did you even get this word? It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. And so to let go like that is super huge. And then to make a shift, to be okay with like, okay, he's working on this paper. And then he was reading in another book, and he's like, you know what? I totally realized that I'm starting from the wrong place in my paper. I need to start way
Ooh.
back here. So I
Yeah.
need to redo this whole thing. And I was like, go ahead. And so he's
Yeah.
writing a whole nother thing that he wants to turn into a book. So he's writing this whole other thing. So he ditched this whole thing. It'll eventually come to fruition. Maybe
Yeah.
not. Who cares? Right? It's so amazing to be able
Process.
to process that, because he's like, oh, I need to listen to this, and oh, I need to, and I'm giving him just resources. And it's hard to keep up with like the resources sometimes, because you're like, okay, let's go to the library, let's look at the data, let's look at, and let's look at what this person, references, and look at their references, and let's look, here, and this is what I know, and lots of things. It's really amazing to be able to let go like that, because you're the inside teacher part of me that's trained to be a teacher in public education is like, oh, we should be doing math.
Totally.
But
Totally.
who cares? Who
Right.
cares?
Well, and if I may, and
Yeah.
I'm looking out of the side of my eye because I've got Bloom's taxonomy on the wall, literally across from me, and that analyze, evaluate, create. Those are the top 3 on the pyramid. And this is, a fantastic way to analyze how you're asking kids to show what they know. And those 3, that applies to math. Even though he's writing an essay,
Absolutely.
he analyzed what he was writing and goes, oh no, this isn't working well in terms of my argument. And when he gets back to math eventually, he's going to say, oh, but this process makes sense, or showing my work in this way makes sense so that my brain can organize it better. Same as my essay, same as my book.
Totally.
There's all these skills that we're really developing over time that are coming through cross-curricular connections. So I love it.
That's why I used to love I don't know why I can't say that word, geometry. I used to love proofs, because they were like essays to me.
Mhm.
And I loved I didn't love writing essays, but I liked writing. And so I liked the aspect of, here's your question that you're trying to answer. Then you have your thesis, and like this whole thing, and you just prove it with your body paragraphs, right? In quotation marks. And so it's really interesting in the way that works out. And you're right. Absolutely. The thinking is there. And that's the important part. Right. And so, and it all comes to fruition at some point. It all comes together. And I love this conversation, because we can meet our kids in homeschool wherever they are at. And that is so amazing. Do you guys do you see what I'm saying about Melissa? She's pretty amazing, right? She has like all these. So Melissa, can you tell us about your gifted homeschool group, and then your resources as well, because I know you have a lot.
So I do have a Facebook group that's homeschool parents, teachers, resource creators. So if you've got those things, come join us over on Facebook. Fantastic place to share and ask questions and kind of get help with what you're working on. But I do teach with Brain Train on OutSchool, which is fantastic. Those classes are so fun and really fun to teach. And if that says anything about what the kids are enjoying about it, that's it's a testament to what's happening in our classes. And we've got kids of all types in there. It's fun for me to know that kids like we have in our classes. We've got 2E kids, we've got very academic kids, we've got very social kids. Kids come in, and that's the beauty of it, that they're all working together, and we as conductors can kind of guide that. And then also on melissasteaching.com, you'll find lots of different writing opportunities, games for language and English learning, unit studies on Roman numerals. That's like my favorite thing that I've ever made. So just really fun stuff. I find that the more fun I have creating it, the more fun our kids have using it, and the more they get out of it. So would love to have you guys over there. And yeah, I'm just really happy to be here and excited for those of you who are on this journey. Thank you for putting in the work for your kids, if I can say that. I think that's a really important thing to say. A lot of times we don't get that from our kids, and possibly not from the family members who are around us. So I'm excited for you guys.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And being intentional. If you're here, if you're watching or listening to this, you are an intentional parent. You are wanting to do what's best for your kids, and you are willing to learn more to do that. And there is nothing more beautiful than that. And so, and for your kids to see you doing that is even more beautiful. So that is really amazing. You guys, definitely, you have to check out Melissa's workshop in the Homeschool Success Mastery program. It is so in depth. It's really a place where you can, if you think you have a gifted student, if you have a gifted student, this is where you can really dig down and say, okay, I need to change. Here's where my thinking needs to be. Here's where my practical application can come in handy, and I can really nail down how I can help my students. So this has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Melissa. And you guys, I know that you are going to be seeing her over and over again because she's fantabulous and I love her. So, all right, you guys, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.